My Best Friend, My Enemy by Amanda Schaefer. I squirmed in my chair, eyes glued to the clock. Any onlooker would assume my frantic wiggles were simply a first grader's built-up anticipation for recess, or even that I had to use the restroom. Neither of these assumptions were correct. The moment that bell rang, my feet would hit the floor with the heaviness of defeat. Each step would be harder than the last as I walked down the corridor to what felt like my demise. Once the clock struck noon, it would be time to go to lunch, and after lunch would be recess, and at recess, she would be there. I don't know very much about her. She was in a different first grade classroom, and I once heard a classmate call her Des. All I knew for sure was that she was scary. I could even say terrifying. The minute the recess bell would strike, she would be right behind me. I don't exactly remember how or why this first began, but one day she just started chasing me at recess. No matter where I hid or who I stuck by, she would come charging at me and wouldn't let up until the recess bell chimed again, telling us to head back inside. As I began remembering this, I would beg to the clock, just a little harder. I pleaded with the clock silently in my head. Please, if you just stop right there, I won't fight with my brother for a week. But it never worked. Ding dong, cried the clock. I glared up at it, whispering, Traitor! I took my place in line to head off to lunch. The hallway to lunch always seemed so short. I began imagining that the hallway would last forever, and I would never have to go to recess. My classmates would shout, We're never going to make it to lunch! And I would look sympathetic, but on the inside, I'd be grinning from ear to ear. But alas, every step brought us closer to the lunchroom doors, and eventually, inside. I felt like a prisoner on death row as I held out my tray and received my portions of what looked to be mashed potatoes and meatloaf. My head hung low as I made my way to my seat. Everyone around me was chatting to one another, beaming about what they were going to get to play at recess, who they were going to ask, how many balls they needed for their activity. But I knew what my activity was going to be, running, as fast as I could. Finally, it was time to face the music. I slowly stepped outside into the afternoon light. My eyes scanned the perimeter. No sign of her yet. I dashed as quickly as I could to the playground. The rhythmic sound of my feet hitting the pavement sounded loud and harsh. I feared that she would hear me and come running from whatever it was that was distracting her thoughts of torturing me for the day. Maybe, just maybe, I could make it to a hiding spot. I managed to duck under a slide without being spotted. It won't be long, I sighed softly. But it was long. Minute after minute passed, and no Des. I looked around and finally mustered enough courage to step outside the security of the slide. Nothing. I didn't know what could have happened to her. I began to speculate where my enemy had gone. Had she been sick that day? Did she fall and hurt herself while coming to find me? Did she get abducted? Or was she finally bored of torturing me? No, definitely not that. She must have been abducted. Timidly, I began walking around the schoolyard. Every step was just as light as the next. It was as if I was walking on the belly of a sleeping monster. Finally, I spotted her. I ducked behind a tree and held my breath as I slowly peeked out my head. There she was. She was under the biggest tree in the schoolyard, sitting peacefully under its shade. I watched for a few moments before becoming bored of this tranquil image. I mustered up all my courage and began walking towards her. She spotted me quickly, but only let her eyes fall on me for a second before looking away as if she didn't know me. For some reason, this upset me greatly, and I walked up to the tree, not brave enough to break into its shade. Why are you not chasing me? I asked sternly. I'm tired, she replied simply, as if the answer was so obvious. Oh, was all I could muster. I stood there awkwardly for a beat before sitting down out of the shade, just outside her reach. We began talking shortly after, and soon enough the recess bell was ringing, calling us all inside. Des stood up and looked down at me. She motioned for me to follow her, and began to head off inside. The next day, my eyes were glued to the clock. But like my classmates, I just wanted it to go faster. I had a new friend to play with at recess.